that again. Okay, so dominance and control. Now, if you looked at the reading or you skimmed through it or you actually read it, good job. That's awesome. But you might have some questions as how exactly does interruption differ from overlap? So there are these two concepts that Tannen is kind of getting her hands dirty in, and that is the difference between when am I interrupting you and when am I overlapping you? And again, this might boil down to simple gender again, like we studied Monday night. Now, in this PowerPoint, I'd like to apply a lot of the interruption overlap material and theory that we learned to that of interviewing. In the very last slide, we'll look at an Obama interview with a lot of interruptions. Forget overlap, it's pure out interruptions. We're going to look at that. Now, to start off this lecture, I'd like to play this. This is kind of a, if you notice on YouTube sometimes, they have, because you try to find clips of something, random, and then sometimes someone else has posted it, videotaping it on TV or something like that. That's this. But this segment right here basically pokes fun at Ellen DeGeneres because she's constantly interrupting people. She doesn't let people, she's kind of known for that. And Family Guy takes a stab at her and is kind of making fun of her for interrupting people. And again, this is kind of hard to see or hear, but it's just kind of funny to see them making fun of Ellen.
We now return to Ellen only talks when her guest is talking.
I have great memories. I danced all over my house. I tried dancing over I also was in a jazz bar back in school.
Anyway, it comes out Friday.
I think there's like something in the air, like smog or pollinated smog.
Are you just gonna talk over everything?
I love talking on TV. Yeah, I'll do anything to talk on TV.
So again, that's kind of silly, I know. And Family Guy, it's like, I don't know why. I stumbled upon that show when I was in college years ago, and it's just kind of caught on. And back then, it really wasn't very popular. It was kind of underground. It had already been canceled. I think my freshman year of college, it had premiered, and then it was canceled that year, and then came back because it was popular. So again, Ellen, is she constantly interrupting people? We could probably find a lot of evidence to support that. Maybe she's what we call a high involvement, like me. High involvement. We'll get into that. Maybe she's just a little bit too much enthusiastic about conversation interaction, sort of thing. So issues of dominance and control. So interruption, is it a hostile act? Often, Tannen takes this sort of misogynistic approach to communication, especially when she's talking about gender, in her book, You Just Don't Understand. All right, where she's focusing on gender communication. So misogynic stereotype accusing women of talking too much. And we talked about that on Monday night. So it's widely cited that men interrupt women more often. She calls this, or she questions, this is a form of conversational bullying. So we have the interrupter, who's the aggressor, and the interrupted as the innocent victim, who is, how dare you interrupt me, sort of thing. I would think that most people get annoyed about interruption when they're in a conflict of some sort. When you get into an argument with someone and someone's cutting you off or interrupting you, how frustrating is that? Because you're trying to lay out everything out there and they're just cutting you off, making you more PO'd, if I may. All right, so the aggressor, innocent victim, the interrupted, the interrupted. Tannen takes a much closer look at it. She says interruption is especially misunderstood in close relationships with our partners, our girlfriends, our boyfriends, whoever. She says, you interrupt me raises issues of dominance and control that are fundamental to the politics of gender. The relationship between interruption and dominance bears closer inspection. Again, this is back in 1990, so we're going back a few years here, and I think we're going back to that whole notion that men are, again, stuck on hierarchy, status, that sort of thing. Women, on the other hand, are much more about that notion of rapport, relationship building, emotional attachment, that sort of thing. All right, and that's what this chapter is all about. I think it's funny she wrote 25 pages on interruption. So interruption in context. Context is key. If you are a student sitting there and you're interrupting me as an instructor, we're going to have an issue. But if we're just having a simple banal conversation, about the weather, if you interrupt me, I'm probably not going to throw a hissy fit about it. All right, so context, the background, the situation, the scenario is key. What was being discussed? Was this a conflict? What was the top boy? Is this an issue? Is this someone cheating on you and you're confronting someone? Did someone steal your ATM pin? Go ahead, steal my ATM pin. You're not going to get anything out of there. Speaker's intentions. Was I trying to hurt your feelings? Or was I just really excited to talk to you? Reactions to each other. You know, if you're smiling, you're affable, you have a friendly gesture about yourself, that's sort of the dynamic of the situation, chances are you're not going to think of it as interruption maybe as much as overlap. And then finally, what effect the interruption had on the conversation. Did it destroy the conversation? Did it turn topics and change topics now because of it? Are we moving on to a different conversation? Did I switch speakers now and listeners? So now I'm going to someone else and I'm saying, screw you, I forget you, I'm going on to the next person and listening to that. So what effect the interruption had on the conversation? Some linguists might see overlap, others may see interruption. So she's saying it all boils down to context, background, speaker's intentions, what's being discussed, reactions, and then the effect that it actually has on the scenario, the conversation, the interaction, that sort of thing. Tannen believes it's open to interpretation, as is. Interruption and interpretation. So this is, again, all about determining whether a speaker is actually violating, which is a strong word there, violating another speaker's rights. You have to know the situation. You have to know the context. You have to know what's being discussed. You have to sort of be in the moment there. So what are the speakers saying? Are they swearing at each other? What is the content? The verbal sort of stuff being spoken. How long has each one been talking? Have you have that one friend? Some of you might have that one friend you love dearly, but sometimes they have a bit too much drama going on in their life, and you may not have talked to that person for a little while or a few weeks or whatnot, and you call them on the phone or they call you, and they just go on and on and on about whatever's going on in their life, and you try to get one little word in to signal like, this isn't all about you, what about me? I'm here too, this is a two-way conversation, let's treat it that way. I have a few of those friends, and perhaps I've been that friend before. Can you imagine me not stop talking? Oh, I couldn't imagine that. What has their past relationship been? Are they cool? Are they on bad terms? Are they fighting? That sort of thing. Is there conflict? How do they feel about being cut off? Believe it or not, geography plays a huge role in this. We'll get to that culture sort of later. And finally, what is the content of the second speaker's comment relative to the first? So what's that sort of follow-up comment? Are the people taking offense to it? It's all being shown through interaction, through talk, through speech. So what is the content of the second speaker's comment relative to the first? Is it a reinforcement? Is it a contradiction? Are we changing topics? What is the second speaker trying to do? Are they trying to fix your car? They need to know information? Are they in a rush? Are you in a business meeting? Are you just having a sort of a simple conversation with a friend? Context is key. So example could be a change in topic, can be an indirect show of support. If you are interrupting someone, you're changing topic, you might say like, oh, I support this friendship that we have or this relationship, but I need to interrupt you so we can change topics somewhat. All right, any questions about this? I know I'm moving a bit fast. I apologize for that. I know how I am. I get into it a little too much. Diversity and discourse. Again, discourse, don't let that term throw you off. Discourse is all about spoken language, written language, text, that sort of thing, language. So diversity and discourse, how significant is the violation of speech? Different speakers have different conversational styles. Clearly, I have a much different conversational style than most people. I'm very boisterous, I'm very loud, I'm very animated. I'm very high involvement. I like to talk, I like to flush out ideas. If I'm reading about something or if I'm watching something, I like to talk about it afterwards. I'm a talker, surprise. So a speaker might feel interrupted even if the other did not intend to interrupt. And this is when culture and geography really start to come in. And I think we want to compare, New Jersey, New Yorkers, even some Connecticut people, sort of mid-Atlantic people, compare them to Southern Californians, there's going to be a big difference. Okay, between me and Dr. Jeff Good, those of you that know Dr. Good, we're two complete, he's like chill, kind of like whatever dude, like relaxed, goes with the flow, he doesn't get stressed, he doesn't get crazy, he doesn't show up too much over enthusiasm. Put him up against me, I'm like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like the Energizer Bunny, I won't shut up, I won't sit down. He's from Southern California, kind of like the chill place, in North America. And then you got me from New York, suburbs. All right, there's going to be different styles of speech. All right, and that's sort of how. So, I might not intend to interrupt you. I might be trying to just be nice and get involved in the conversation, and you take that as interruption. Maybe because you're from Southern California, or you don't understand my conversational style. This kind of relates very well, actually, to women and gender rapport and report talk, because it's all about style. And I think that's what Tannen is really boiling it down to. And socialization. Let's remember. Okay, so example 1 here. This is right out of the textbook, as you can tell by this lovely technology right here. So the female says, so, you really can't bitch when you've got all those on the same day, then 4.2 seconds goes by. But I asked my physics professor if I couldn't change that. The male busts into the conversation, or totally, it looks like he's interrupting her, by coming in, as she's talking, she's not done speaking yet, she's just paused for 4.5 seconds. Now she's trying to finish up her idea, and he says, don't touch that. Don't touch that. And the female says, what? Pause. I've got everything just how I want it in that notebook. You'll screw it up leafing through it like that. Did he violate the woman's space? Did he violate her turn to talk? All right. West and Zimmerman on interruption. They are pointing that it is interruption because the second speaker began while the first speaker was in the middle of a word. All right, so again, right here, change came in right there and then kind of washed her last few words out. We have to remember, words are precious. It might be the last word of an utterance, but it still means something. All right, so they're saying, yeah, that's definitely interruption there. All right. Tannen's opinion. Tannen disagrees slightly with this. She says interrupting to ask the woman to stop leafing through his notebook doesn't in itself violate her right to talk. Tannen feels it's justified because of her handling of the organization of his notebook. Basically, Tannen, which I'm surprised about, is giving the guy some credit and saying, no, it's technically not interruption because she's violating his organization. So it's kind of like, well, you're violating me, so I'm going to violate you. That doesn't sound good. Sorry. Moving on. Conversational diversity. And I think I'm a pretty good spokesman for this slide because I don't speak similarly like you folks do. Especially, again, if you're from the South maybe, or if you're from Southern California. Maybe if you're from even Southern Jersey or upstate New York. That was the one thing I picked up right away being in upstate New York. That accent where they talk like this. And they flatten their A's, and they talk about bathrooms and curds and the snow. Yeah, I'm definitely over exaggerating, and I don't want to sound like I'm making people from upstate New York sound folksy, like Sarah Palin-esque, but they sort of do compared to our very horrible, our kind of give me a car, I need the car keys, accents and long drawn out ahs and uhs and that sort of thing, especially Long Islanders, and I know if you're from Comac or something, you really don't talk like that. But, talk like that. So, again, I noticed that right away when I came up to upstate New York. And I was like, okay. And then everyone made fun of me because I'd say talk instead of talk, and I'd say coffee instead of coffee, and that sort of thing. I've kind of learned over the years to adjust my vernacular a little bit. So perhaps you grew up in a home where conversation was constant. Constant talking. I could not imagine being in a quiet family because we were all loud and obnoxious. That's just how we are. Our conversations were sparse. There wasn't a lot of talk going on, so we're not kind of used to that sort of thing. Overlap is seen as mechanical, sort of like, oh, you did kind of cut me off there. Let's talk about that. An interruption is seen as through individual perceptions of rights and obligations. Again, if you come from my family, the Perrello family, everyone's interrupting, everyone's cutting people off, it's just kind of natural. But other people come to my family for a holiday dinner. Ooh, I would never recommend that for anyone. Unless you wanted, to be on an episode of Cops or something like that. But, I think if someone from, upstate New York, the rural areas came to my house for, Christmas Eve dinner, whoa, bring your earplugs. Bring a Valium and some earplugs because you're never going to go to sleep and you're going to eat too much food to want to leave. So, So that, again, conversational diversity, knowing where you come from, your geographic background, what's your family like? And again, this is reinforcing, again, what Tannen could have said in the first few pages of the book. It all has to do with socialization. It all has to do with our families, where we came from, where we grew up, all right, how people treated the other sex and gender, that sort of thing. So overlap without interruption, again, overlap is sort of seen as the non-violation, sort of the nice interruption, if you may. So interruption as a sign of dominance assumes that conversation is an activity in which one speaker speaks at a time. This also reflects ideology more than practice. So you may believe, you can believe anything you want, but until you carry that out, it doesn't mean squat. So Tannen's data reflected multiple conversations going on at once, yet all speakers didn't feel violated. All right, and this is sort of, we can think of this as like a cocktail party, or even like if you go to a fraternity or a sorority party, there's tons of conversations going on at once. Maybe there's a DJ there playing music, good music, and so everyone's talking at once. It's not seen as a violation, because you're hanging out with friends, you're kind of, sipping on wine or whatnot. I don't know, you don't have wine at fraternity parties. Okay, go back to Oswego, Christopher. And then I love this right here. They were caught with their verbal pants down, basically saying that that they were going out on a limb and they were kind of interrupting, but the context was so that they weren't seen like they were interrupting. All right, and that's just a silly thing that Tannen throws in there. Unintended interruption. So inadvertent interruptions. I didn't mean to do that sort of thing. I didn't realize I was really interrupting people until I analyzed this chapter, I think, more closely. So different conversational styles have different influences on is it interruption or not. So one is high considerateness and the other is high involvement. All right. Again, I gave that comparison to myself and Dr. Good from Southern California. He's very high considerateness. I'm very high involvement, so I'm very involved in the conversation a lot. If I find something that I'm interested in, or I want to appease you, or make you feel special, I'll be into the conversation. High considerate is I will let you talk as much as you want, and I will listen, and I will only respond when you're done talking. That sort of thing. So speakers not imposing, while others, quote, showed enthusiastic involvement. I think Tannen, I have met her. She is a high involvement speaker. She gets a little bit into this. Again, enthusiasm, kind of overworking it. High considerateness occurs when speakers expected longer pauses between speaking processes, okay? So you speak first, I'll speak once you're completely done, take a breath, we'll talk, that sort of thing. And then while they were waiting for the proper pause, the high involvement speakers got the impression they had nothing to say and filled in to avoid awkward silence. And that's how you know who the high involvement speakers are. If you just shut up and that person doesn't like silence, it's kind of awkward, uncomfortable to them. They need to fill it with something. So that's that's a scenario that a lot of us are in, although I feel like a lot of you are sort of high considerateness to some extent. You guys are a lot more chill. Any questions about that? Again, very linguistic-y, I know, but this is the last sort of interpersonal thing we're doing. Of course, in CRS, we have to teach you some interpersonal stuff, and this is kind of bringing it out there. Latchings. Latching is a very metaphorical thing. It's not really literal. We're going to see it in data in a second. Latchings are just instances where a second speaker begins speaking without leaving any perceptible pause. So it's not necessarily interruption. It's kind of like I'm just sliding in an utterance into the conversation without you really being interrupted. That is a latching, all right? And we'll see this in a minute. Know that definition. You don't have to know an example of it or anything. This probably will show up on your midterm, but just know the straight up definition. I'll tell you right now, it's probably on the matching section of it. I can't believe that I already had to sit down and work on a midterm. How's it almost, before I know it's going to be October. Ugh, so not looking forward to that. So, and remember, I will give you a review sheet. No need to stress. It will be good. And then don't forget too, we're going to watch Game Change, the movie, and you're going to have to write an essay about that. So, won't be too bad. Game Change is a great movie. All right, here is a latchings example. So we have Steve and Deborah, and Peter. So we have actually 3 characters in this story. Deborah, of course, Deborah Tannen. Steve, I think, was her husband at the time, or her current husband, and Peter, I don't remember who he is. So Steve says, I think it's basically done damage to children. That what good it's done is outweighed by the damage. And then Deborah says, did you two grow up with the television? And then Peter said, very little. We had a TV in the Quonset. And then she said, how old were you when your parents, were you when your parents got it? And Steve says, we, as she's ending there. So he's kind of coming in and bucking her a little bit. Kind of answering back quickly. Because she's kind of high involvement here. Steve, we had a TV, but we didn't watch it all the time. We were very young. I was 4 when my parents got a TV. Right away, you were 4? I even remember that. I don't remember. I remember they got a TV before we moved out of the Quonset huts in 1954. All right, so it's kind of like we're latching on. I mean, basically, I guess that's a good way of explaining it too. Duh. We're latching on to the previous utterance. Okay? We're not technically interrupting. We're latching on, grabbing at the moment. All right? I know, again, this is very picky. Perrello, why are we learning this in depth? All right, successful cooperative overlapping. Cooperative overlapping is when two individuals who are interacting don't interrupt each other, but overlap each other to the point where it's not a violation of talk or speech or space. So speakers show no evidence of annoyance or discomfort. So it's actually got some psychological merits to it. I didn't piss you off. Great. I guess, we cooperatively overlapped. I know, kind of straightforward there. Peter and Steve, in this particular story that we just saw, operate as a duet almost. Again, duet, two people singing or talking or something like that. That sort of thing. So they're operating as a duet, kind of latching on to the very last utterance that was made. High involvement speakers and overlap. So again, high involvement speakers are known for their interruption. All right, because again, they're just so enthusiastic about speaking. So why do high involvement speakers mind overlap? All right, so we're taking in the Tannen view that they don't mind overlap. So I don't care if you overlap it. So they yield to an intrusion if they feel like it or not. They might pull off responding or ignore the intrusion completely. If someone is high involvement, chances of them catching on that you are interrupting them is really null. Because it's like they're just not socially aware of it. I don't view interruption as dreadful as other people may because I interrupt people. Also, overlaps are cooperative because they do not change the topic but elaborate on it. So instead of changing the topic, I'm kind of wanting more information about it. We're exacerbating the topic a little bit. All right, and again, that's just some technical things with high involvement speakers and overlap. Am I good? I know I'm rushing. Cultural differences. Okay, and this is what it all boils down to. Tannen is Jewish, which I guess gives her some good fodder for talking or discussing about Jewish ethnic backgrounds. And she studied 3 high involvement speakers from New York City and from Jewish backgrounds. All right? She's basically saying ethnically Jewish people have a very high involvement way of speaking. It's kind of what she observed. Again, most of my friends growing up in high school, suburbs of New York City, either Jewish or Catholic. I know, kind of, wow. So, very strange, what always got me were the kids who celebrated Christmas and Hanukkah. Very jealous of those kids growing up. You're Jewish and Catholic. So Jewish New Yorkers, many New Yorkers who aren't Jewish, that's me, and many Jews who are not from New York, have high involvement style. Okay, there's a lot of shows on TV, that kind of pigeonhole or make Jewish people look like they're way too involved or they're way too nagging, that sort of thing, like the typical Jewish mom or the grandmother who's overprotective and that sort of thing. So they're often perceived as interrupting in conversations with speakers from different backgrounds, such as Californians. Kind of easy breezy, cool people. Kind of, hey man, let's chill sort of thing instead of this whole high involvement stuff. People from California probably would not like me very much. So I'd be too obnoxious, I think, for them. And again, I'm not Jewish, but I definitely am high involvement. I think being from, right outside of New York City definitely had an influence on that. So Midwestern, Californian, and New England, all are regions that seem to reflect some sort of custom in relation to interruption and overlap. And she goes into a little bit more detail in the reading, so if you want some more specifics, just shoot to the reading, So that's awesome. Moving on. I think we're going to get out of here. Right on time tonight. So gender, a difference in style. Again, we talked about report talk and reporter talk on Monday, so I'm not going to try not to bore you with it right now. So overall, Tannen dubs women as cooperative overlappers. Really, what about the Jewish high involvement New Yorker there? So what she did is use faculty meeting data. Again, she likes this sort of faculty meeting thing. She was a teacher too. So men talked more than women and one person was speaking while others listened silently. And she also found that women talked as much as men during periods when more than one voice was heard at the same time. So it's almost like the women felt more comfortable when there was lots of overlapping going on. So women were less likely to participate when the situation felt like report talk or public speaking, kind of that sort of hierarchy status kind of masculine way of talk, more likely to do so when it felt like rapport talk or there was emotion involved, or if you're talking about something emotional or kind of draining wise. All right, and again, she is stereotyping here, but she is doing it based off of scholarship. Right. I do believe this is the last slide. No, almost the last slide. So we're going to see a clip of Barack Obama, who is in an interview. And again, you need to kind of hone this into, well, okay, Perrello, that's great and all, but how does this apply to interviewing? That is the course I'm taking. I'm not taking an interruption class. So before, we'll talk about Obama in a second. Sorry, I just do want to get this. So we need to keep in mind that this affects what we call decorum. Decorum is a rhetoric term, believe it or not, rhetoric, and that's a good way. I learned what decorum was coming into the program as a grad student by the term swagger. I got swagger. I'm not me. I don't have swagger, but I mean, I got it. The light bulb went off in my head because this guy seems to have a lot of it. Or he used to, not really anymore. He kind of lost some of his swagger once he became boring president. But so decorum is swagger, sort of. How am I acting during the interview? Am I professional? Am I not professional? Am I interrupting you all the time? So swagger is sort of the dynamic of yourself during the, what's your personality like? Always let the interviewee finish a verbal thought. Okay, that's important to know if you're interviewing someone. I noticed that Oprah with the Lindsay Lohan interview really did not interrupt very often. She was pretty good about that sort of thing. Gender plays a role. Is this person aggressive? Is it hostile? Is it lighthearted? Again, men seem to get excused from this at times because they're men. They're seen as assertive or aggressive is okay. But if a woman does it, they're seen as So, also, the interviewer does not want to be seen as too dominant or controlling. That's something you want to keep in mind when you're interviewing. You don't want to seem like you're a jerk. Let the person speak. And probing questions, and we'll go into question types on Monday. Probing questions are those real direct questions that kind of close you in and box you in. And they kind of want a yes or no answer kind of thing. Probing questions are best to get right to the point, but you risk your credibility. This term right here, Perrello, why don't you just use the word credibility? Well, ethos is a word that you should know in CRS from 183. Credibility. So your credibility is on the line. When you're Dr. Phil and you're constantly barraging people with probing questions and you're just being annoying to some people. Like, stop it. That sort of thing. So just interviewing and interruption, kind of summing this up. Try to be aware of interruptions. I'm a little bit more since I've discovered this scholarship. Interruptions can signal a shift in alignment at times. Alignment, haven't heard that one since 181. Alignment, footing, what kind of stance I'm taking. Interruptions signal dissatisfaction of an answer or question at times. We're going to see that. Could be a play for power. We're going to see that in this clip too. Verbally, it entails an assault. All right, Tannen, okay, you're a little drama there, okay? And then here, let's watch this clip, and then let's just talk about it. This is a Fox News interview. As you know, Fox, and they don't really like Obama. They're not shy about that. And Obama really, I think, handles this pretty darn well. He keeps his cool, and I don't know how he does that. He must have had a cigarette right before he did that. He does smoke cigarettes. Ooh, this is too loud. Cover your ears.
I'm Beth, and I'm Michelle, and we own the Paper Cottage. It's a stationery and gift store. Anything we purchase
no, this isn't it.
Goes on our ink card.
Excuse me. All right. Sorry. I guess I'm not on point tonight.
At the end of their healthcare interview, Brett Baer had the grace to apologize to President Obama for his many interruptions and in doing so, talked over the president as he tried to respond. The interruptions were unusual both because most news organizations, as I've said, tend to defer to the office of the president in matters of conversational decorum in that kind of setting. And also because it is just impossible to imagine anyone from Fox interrupting former President Bush or Vice President Cheney in the manner that you are about to see.
We are interviewing President Barack Obama.
I don't spend a lot of time worrying about what the procedural rules are in the House or the Senate.
Mr. President, this Monday.
Because of healthcare.
Okay, so Mr. President, let me insert this.
But
let me get to some specifics on substance, not process. So you don't buy the CBO or the actuary.
I could read the exact same emails.
People. It's not just Washington Pundit.
We're fixing a broken system.
Don't ever do
And
that.
the key, I am not.
You're saying that that's that vote.
What I am is small businesses are helped.
Do you
That's
know?
what they're concerned about.
Understand. Do you know which ones are still?
They
I don't like to talk about process. You called it an ugly process.
And the reason
the U.S. economy goes so how do you guarantee that they're gonna be able to keep their doctor?
Let me finish. For
The special deals are that are in or that are not. Mr. President, I'm getting wrapped up and I don't want to interrupt you. I'm trying to get the most for our buck here.
Wow. Don't do that. I don't wanna hear that you did that in an
Was this
interview.
guy fired?
I don't think so, no, I've seen him on Fox News since.
Mama should have walked off.
But you gotta give him credit, like he kept his cool. I would have thrown his
I would have been like, alright, this interview's over.
Yeah, that's not cool, like what he just did. And you know what, George W. Bush wouldn't have put up with that. You know, George would have probably just laughed in whoever's faces and been like, but I don't even know if he would have sat for the interview maybe because he kind of stopped giving interviews after his last year in office when he had 21% approval rating. But don't do that. That's bad. Bad, but you are all SU students. No matter your political ideology, you kind of realize that that's not cool. No matter if you're interviewing a Christian conservative or a radical kind of leftist, what do they call them, wing nuts or something. Or that could go with the right or the left. That is the presentation. If you want to go back, I mean, this clip that I was going to show is from Hillary Clinton in Benghazi. I think this is from last semester when it was popular, and she's like, what does that matter, you know? If someone died, you know, that someone's dead or whatnot, she got some flack for that. That'll come up if she runs for president. So that is interruption overlap. Any questions? Again, very technical linguistic stuff. We're done with that sort of stuff. Monday we move on to questions, which is like the real hardcore interviewing stuff. Please look at chapter 3 on questions, and don't forget to work on your transcription project that's due on Monday. If you have any questions about that, feel free to see me or email me or anything like that. Have a wonderful weekend, of course, when your weekend's this week, and don't do anything I want to do, stay out of trouble, all that fun stuff. Thanks a lot, guys. You were great tonight. No, you can just, you know what, if you could just kind of chuck them in the garbage, or please don't throw them on the floor because then I'm going to have to pick them all up, or just shove them in your pocket or something like that if you have pockets, of course. Thank you. Appreciate that. Oh, I have to turn this off.